Hey everybody, Dave Floss here with Mentally Unbalanced and Prometheus Falling Toys, and today I'm going to be talking about the Alien role-playing game Colonial Marines expansion. So stick around. So if you came to this video hoping to learn more about the Alien role-playing game and starter set, that is actually in a different video, which I will put in the link in this video. For today, I'm going to be talking about Destroyer of Worlds expansion and the Colonial Marines book expansion from Free League or Free League Press. And I'm really excited because about a year ago, I did a review of the Alien role-playing game, and I had nothing but fond things to say about the game. And I'm pleased to say that Free League seems to be just keep on churning with some great additional content to this fantastic game. And it really builds off of the core of the main game, but opens up a lot of new doors and availability of different types of characters not really covered in the core game. And the easiest way I think I can describe this, if I was to sum it up in one sentence, is the Alien role-playing game, to me, really captured the essence of the Alien movie, about horror, about stress, about the odds up against you and not really being in a good place to tackle what you are being presented with. Kind of on the reverse, but no less positive, the expansions really start to take us into Aliens territory. That is amping up the action, amping up the alien threat, and of course introducing and really bringing in the idea of the Colonial Marines who get in there and can kick some ass. So the first thing I want to talk about that came out first is the Alien expansion, Destroyer of Worlds, a small expansion set that included a number of supplemental materials to the core game. Now, they don't really go into vast detail around the creation of the Colonial Marines as characters or individual missions. It is a very in-depth cinematic adventure. And for those who may not be familiar with Alien, the role-playing game, and how it's set up, it can really be run in two completely distinct ways. The first, as a conventional campaign-driven RPG. Creation of characters, exploration, and going on missions, and building up over a series of adventures over time, usually following the same set characters. Alternatively, Alien introduced the idea of cinematic adventures, or pretty much one-shots. This is where either pre-generated or your own generated characters are put into a very specific mission campaign, okay, that you run through, very, very detailed and laid out, and inevitably, depending on the cinematic adventure, ends with some form of conclusion. It's not necessarily meant to go on. Now, we saw that in the core game and the starter set, which include Chariots of the Gods, which was very much an homage, in my opinion, to Alien. The space trucker, the derelict type spaceship, the alien threat, more of a horror, more of things lurking around corners. With Destroyer of Worlds, we take it to the next level with the Colonial Marine type of campaign. And even as just a cinematic adventure, right? Almost 100 pages of content just in the adventure guide for this cinematic adventure. Now, besides the book, which is going to include all the details for your cinematic adventure and for the game master, or game mother, as they call it, it also includes a lot of really cool additional supplemental material. Now, I won't go into every single individual piece, but a couple of those items that are included are some additional character cards and item cards to supplement the core book, and really begins to bring more of the Colonial Marine items into play. There's also a set of new agenda cards for the various NPC and player characters, the pre-generated player characters, that are now on these individual cards. Of course, it includes these pre-generated characters, mostly Colonial Marines. You have some Colonial Marines, an officer, a medic, a couple others, and just like the core book with its pre-generated characters, we have both the pre-generated character sheet on one side, and then some background details on the other side. So fairly fleshed out, ready to go players that are included. Now the game is intended to be for about 3 to 4 players, and as it suggests, runs a minimum of 3 sessions. So it is not a one and done, get together one night and it's done. So it's a little bit of a meteor cinematic mission or meteor campaign. When we played it through, we actually stretched it out to a few additional sessions, just so, well, to be frank, people needed a bit of a break. It was intense, it was a lot of fun, but at some point you got to take a step back and say, okay, let's continue this in another session. Also included are a number of really, really nice maps. And while the core game also included some maps, there weren't really a great many, mostly to support the Charity to the Gods campaign. But this not only has some individual 8.5 by 11 maps, and another 8.5 by 11 and 11 by 17 map, but for the large station, and hopefully we can get a good idea here, there's also a really nice full fold-out map that's included of the entire district area, and then on the other side of the facilities as well. So what I like about this game in general, and is definitely supported with Destroyer of Worlds, is there's a lot of additional material that you can choose or not choose to use. What do I mean by that? Well, you don't have to use maps, right? In a lot of conventional RPG games, it's really all driven by imagination. But in order to bring your players deeper into the game, a lot of these supplemental materials really help just build off of that, providing a visual, right, to what's being described by the game mother. And while these are not, and I stress not, part of this game or expansion, some of the other ways that you can really build off that is if you want to start to introduce things like miniatures into your game, either for just the aliens, the eggs, barriers, all the way up to the individual characters. And there's a couple really interesting ways that you can achieve that if you want to bring that kind of 3-dimensional aspect into your game. So I'll be brief because really the focus today is on the material of the books, but a couple great ways that you can achieve some of these miniature approaches or adding miniatures to your games is, first, there is an Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core board game that includes a ton of miniatures. Aliens, Queens, Marines, and they have a number of different expansions as well that include some different. And I'll throw a picture up, but those are kind of displayed over here. Another method, of course, is if you have access to possibly Hero Forge. You could build your hero in Hero Forge. Now there's a fee associated with that. Or if you are lucky enough to have access to or your own 3D printer, there's also a number of STL files that you can find online to print your own various characters. I've had mixed success, really good success with things like eggs and some of the other miniatures. The aliens, the xenomorphs themselves tend to be very tricky. They are very elaborate, and at such a small size they can be a bit of a pain to try to 3D print. Definitely would be easier if we were to scale over here like our big chap, but you know, for getting to that smaller detail, you do have some options, and there are different things you can explore online if you wanted to bring in that 3-dimensional aspect and complement the maps and some of the other materials that are included with Destroyer of Worlds. Now, Destroyer of Worlds was like a free sample of bourbon chicken you can get at the mall. They tempt you with, try one, and then you find yourself, I really like that, I want more. Well, do not be disappointed, because more is exactly what you get with the first full expansion book, Colonial Marines, the Colonial Marines Operations Manual. Now, if you got a flavor for playing Marines in Destroyer of Worlds, you will not be disappointed by the Colonial Marines expansion book. And all I really need to do to kind of get that message across is hold it up side by side with the original game. So the original game, let's take a peek right here. The original game, if I skip just right to the end, whopping 392 pages of content. The expansion book, Colonial Marines, let's see where it stacks up. 350 pages, almost as large as the core book. And the entire contents of this book is dedicated to Colonial Marines. So what's really included in that? Well, obviously there's a lot of information about rolling and making your own Colonial Marine type character, the various different types of characters in the Colonial Marines. More than that, it includes a lot of information from the history and development of the Colonial Marines, the various star systems and the various areas of control for the Colonial Marines, the organization of the Colonial, lots of supplemental material to really enhance both for players and of course the game mother. Now, don't be disappointed if you ran through Destroy All Worlds and we're hoping to make sure you get some additional mission and or campaign content in the main book. I do not think you'll be disappointed. About a third of the book is dedicated to a number of really interesting individual missions, campaign missions, campaign building ideas, just a wealth. Again, 350 pages just in this one expansion book alone. Now, Free League did not disappoint either on the quality of the expansion. What we often see in some games is that a beautiful original book comes out hardcover, perhaps special edition, and then we get kind of a lesser quality set of expansions. And ultimately, that is not the case with the Colonial Marines. First of all, beautiful hardcover book, incredible artwork throughout, same general design aesthetic as the core book. They complement each other extremely well, not just from the content, but even just the visual going on within and on the outside and the quality of the book itself. Now, one thing I've been very pleased with Free League, if you order from Free League directly or with several online retailers, is the opportunity to also, when you buy a book or an expansion, to get a PDF custom copy for yourself. Now, this is excellent because with the quality of the book being what it is, let's not be, we can be frank, they're not cheap. I think they're absolutely worth what they cost, but that doesn't mean you're buying 4 or 5 copies so that players or others can have them at their disposal. So the PDF really goes a long way for a game mother to have a digital copy that they can reference. It's searchable, which is obviously a huge convenience when you're looking for a particular stat or rule, as well as being able to use some of that content or print some of that content that's relevant to your players. So now instead of passing the book around or, hey, can I borrow the rules? I gotta look something up. Everybody can reference a digital copy, which I think just makes things a lot easier. Now, overall, I have been extremely happy with Free League. I've played Alien, I've played some of their other games, and I think ultimately, without knowing anything about them personally, it really comes across that they are heavily dedicated to the content and aesthetic of the books. I've played a number of role-playing games, and I actually wanted to demonstrate that for a minute and perhaps put a bit of an age to myself by showing one of my very first Alien Adventure games. This is the Alien Adventure game, came out in 1991, and really is the closest thing we had for a long time, along with a pretty basic and fundamental Alien board game, or Aliens board game, this time it's War, is really all we had great access to. And at the time, these were great fun. They were very simplified rules, very easy to get into. And of course, if you're a fan of Aliens, were just fun to read and walk through. But in comparison, looking at the sheer content and quality, as well as what I think is just a phenomenal system, right? I think it balances the complexity needed to run interesting adventures, and to allow the players to have some degree of customization and control, but the aspect of the custom dice, and especially the stress dice, which can in a moment completely alter what a character is capable of doing or what they might choose to do because of the risks associated with it, is really a neat aspect, which in my first review I spent a lot of time talking about how that really creates that intense level of a game. This is not a sit back, take a drink, and kind of go with the flow role-playing game. It, from what I've played, is intense. And if that's what you're going for, this is the game. Really intense, deep, involved. The characters, the players, and their characters were really invested, sitting around the table, focused on what's going on. So there you have it, the Alien Destroyer of Worlds Cinematic Adventure expansion and the Colonial Marines Operations Manual full book expansion, both of which are available now online. I can't say anything else other than in space, no one can hear you scream, but when playing this game in our basement, there were shrieks abound. Thanks again for joining me. I'm Dave Floss with Mentally Unbalanced and Prometheus Falling Toys, and we will talk to you soon.